Welcome to Tap Into an Expert, the podcast where we sit down with the industry experts to get answers on all the questions you should be asking. Today on the show, we have a very special guest, Ash McMullen. Ash is an e-commerce leader with over 15 years of experience in both brand and agency roles. Currently the head of e-commerce at Advantice Health, a PE-owned CPG portfolio company. She oversees .com growth for well-known brands like Kerasal and Triple Paste, Dermoplast, and Nu Skin. Ash leverages her expertise and a sharp focus on industry trends to craft strategies that consistently keep her brands ahead of the competition. So Ash, it is a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Eric. I'm excited to be here.
So today's title, we're talking to experts versus influencers, what's really driving conversion in e-commerce, and want to cover all the things that you've been experiencing over the past 15 years and the changes that you've seen in the industry. So, from the early message boards and now forgotten online platforms like Friendster, if you remember, and MySpace, of course, to the much more popular and well-functioning Snapchat and TikTok of today, social media has infiltrated every facet of our lives, how we communicate, share information, most notably for today's episode, how we shop. And according to Our World in Data, the percentage of U.S. adults using social media for these purposes increased from 5% in 2005 to 80% in 2019. So given the huge reach of social media platforms, it's inevitable that the growth of the number of influencers would soon follow. As of 2023, there's over 4 million influencers in the US across various platforms, including Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And this number has increased dramatically from just 1.5 million in 2016. On Instagram, the number of users identifying as influencers grew from approximately 500,000 in 2017 to over 2 million by 2023, and that number will probably double by the end of this year. So TikTok's seen a rapid increase in influencers, around 1.1 million creators identified as influencers, and that's up from just a few thousand in 2019. According to LTK, 66% of Instagram users engage with brands on the platform, and Sprout Social reports that 80% of weekly Pinterest users have discovered a new brand or product on the platform. All of this to say, social media has radically changed how people shop. So what we want to start with, Ash, is really how did we get here, the shifts that you've seen, and the exploration of influencer marketing. It's tapped into the power of social proof, which was really the starting point for all of this. Consumers increasingly relying on recommendation from outside voices rather than traditional advertising. I feel like that's something that's just naturally evolved when people start to understand advertising and the different ways that brands are trying to influence them. They're always looking for something else that's going to help them make a better decision. And the first point of that was this social proof happening with people that they were connecting with online, that being in the form of influencers. So social media management platform Sprout Social recently released their 2024 influencer marketing report, finding that 50% of consumers surveyed make purchase decisions because of influencer posts. And trends like this one have forced brands to reallocate budgets from their traditional television marketing to social media marketing. And influencers have allowed e-commerce businesses to tap into pre-existing audiences. So by partnering with influencers to align their target demographics, brands can now reach specific niche markets. And this targeted approach has enabled even small e-commerce players to compete with larger brands by connecting with the right audience. I mean, basically, instead of having to spend a lot of money on a general television campaign, you could really specifically target your niche audience by going through one of these creators on social media. So how has influencer marketing changed in the e-commerce landscape from your perspective over your 15 plus years of experience working on this?
So awesome question and great facts, by the way. That
we like to bring.
I just learned a lot. Shocking with the Pinterest statistic there, because I know I was surprised when I saw a Gen Z panel and the amount of them that used Pinterest as this discovery place, because it's not one that we really talk about as much as TikTok and everything that's kind of just been hot right now.
It was so surprising over this past, year and a half to see the reemergence, I would say, of Pinterest. Pinterest kind of flatlined.
It fell off the map. Like ever since Google may not have wanted to buy it and and then no one really talked about it again. And it's kind of had this, but it fits with the whole like mood and vibes and everything. So
I came home and I asked my daughter when I saw a panel talking about all this Gen Z, and I was like, do you use Pinterest? She's like, yeah, for making my clothes boards and for putting this. I was like, you do? I was like, show me. She had tons. So it's real. It's out there.
Yeah, it's coming back. And that's one of the ways that it's changed. So like when I started in e-commerce, and it was back in 2009, and I had the opportunity to live in Italy in 2011, and social was just starting to kind of migrate to mobile devices. And when I lived in Italy, like I didn't even have a phone when I lived there. I think I had a first generation iPad, and Instagram had just like started to become popular. There were still only like 1 million users or something like that. And it was just very, very was like just used for photos of like your pets and travel. Before then it evolved into this marketing engine. Two major things have happened here from the lens that I view this in. Number one, that when you think about The Devil Wears Prada and that scene, the cerulean blue story, we've essentially almost reversed from where that started. So from a top down to bottoms up. And there's fewer instances where a select number of people or powerful people in a room are making decisions for the general population to now adopt as a trend. Now, an influencer that has a seemingly organic following of individuals can talk about a preferred concept or a product or a concept of a product and innovation, and the market will follow now. So we've kind of gone in like this reverse course of where you used to pick up a Vogue magazine and look at like, when am I going to wear this fall, to someone like kind of designing like their own and saying like, I want something like this, and that kind of taking off. So there's that. And then the other piece is influencer marketing merged with celebrity and gave rise to this whole new revenue stream for celebrity investments, not just as silent investors or like commercial cameos. When I think of like Nespresso and George Clooney and even like the different alcohol brands that a number of celebrities have come into, and then into the beauty category, especially with the Jenners and Hailey Bieber and all of these different brands, that these celebrities just have a whole new stream of product development and a mechanism where they can market those brands, and with a social voice and something closer to a personal connection with consumers. Like there was a time when Jennifer Aniston wasn't even on Instagram, and then she joined and nearly broke the app for like an hour. I can't quite remember, but it was a whole thing. And fast forward to today, she has a really successful hair care line that has grown through this connection that she's created on Instagram with her fans. So, none of that would happen way back then. So we've come a very long way in the influencer world.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you say that, because if you look at somebody like Jennifer Aniston, like at the same time that she was developing her hair care brand on Instagram, she was the face of Smart Water all over billboards. And I wonder which is actually connecting with the consumer more, which is connecting on a more of an emotional level, and which is therefore driving more sales. Have you worked with influencers in your past roles? Do you currently use influencers within the brand portfolio of Advantice Health? And if so, why? If not, why not?
My first experience with influencers was back in 2012, 2013. And it was funny because the first influencer I worked with became famous on MySpace and quickly adapted to Instagram as soon as that became popular. And she built a following and racked up contracts with like anyone from McDonald's to Doc Martens. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is wild, and this is so new. And we had a new boutique hotel that had just opened in Providence, and I knew someone who knew the developer, so worked with them and got a comped weekend suite for her to photograph and shoot with the hotel background. And we promoted the hotel, and I had a hair serum product at the time that we were promoting. And that was kind of like the first influencer campaign. They had a rooftop. It was great. And this was kind of before it was really this full-blown like business model and as monetized as it is today. Fast forward, we have 6 different brands, and we've got Amlactin, which is a therapeutic body lotion. Triple Paste is our favorite diaper rash cream, and Kerasal, which is in the foot care category. So those 3 of the 6 brands use different influencers, and we collaborate with different influencers. And Kerasal is more in the scope of like growing its breadth with influencer collaborations because, foot care, fungal nail products, not the most sexy thing in the world. It's not really an organic influencer type of product versus like Triple Paste diaper rash cream. Earlier this year, we had a very popular dermatologist influencer who picked up our product and organically posted about it, using it on her face as a barrier repair cream and coined it as face basting. And the zinc oxide levels and gentleness of the formula made it a great option for your skin. So she would put it on before bed and like chronicled different posts about it. And it became this great skincare hack. And our search volume frequency for Triple Paste actually surpassed diaper rash cream. And so our branded term became the more popular search than the category term, which was even like, it was wild. So it was great. We further collaborated with her, and that was a great partnership. And then Imlactin also uses different like derm influencers. So we have different avenues of different influencers, but they're all very credentialed because our brands are really rooted in efficacious skin health, that we're very intentional about the influencers that we partner with. And which is why we always go toward the expert and the professional that's in the field that our products and brands are like live in, for trusted voices that are talking about these brands.
That's so interesting. Well, 2 things. Number 1, for your first influencer to make a leap from MySpace to Instagram and be able to do that successfully is unique. I feel like now it's this most depressing thing in the world when a new platform comes out and the people who were popular on the last one can't make that switch over for whatever reason. It's a different type of way we consume content, or it's a different generation that's connecting with those type of influencers or creators. But what's also, I think, coming through on what you're talking about is you were saying these partnerships started from a place of authenticity. So did you contract the derm first before she put out the content with using it on her face?
No, this was something that social listening found. Like we found it after the fact. We didn't have any contact with her prior to. It was just a wonderful like thing that happened to the brand.
Yeah, and I think like if that could be replicated, that is sustainable. That is authenticity in its greatest form, where somebody talks about a product because they love the outcome of using that product and they want to share that because they feel so positive about it. And then the brand gets involved to amplify it and to do more and expand on that partnership. I think the problem, and moving into our second segment, is the authentically inauthentic, which is where we are today, where the majority of people no longer believe that influencers even use the products that they're promoting, let alone that they love them, that they're so excited to share it with their followers. They don't even believe that they use them. And it's the exact opposite of where it started. It's also the exact opposite of the situation that you just explained, which works incredibly well because the outcomes that you had was amazing. But nowadays you pull out your phone between a commercial break, you look through Instagram or whatever platform you're on, and you see an influencer, and within a couple seconds, it becomes very clear, or at least the thought is in your mind, that they're just getting paid to promote this. So you skip past that. And 61% of young people, 13 to 39, lose trust in influencers who post too many ads. Now, I think there is also this idea of an understanding, especially with the younger generation, that influencers, that's how they make their money, which is what allows them to not work and make content for a living, because they got to get paid by somebody. Somebody's got to pay for that art, for that content. So it makes sense. But overdoing it is also killing their opportunities in this area. And all of this influencing, is really coming at a cost. Customers have grown increasingly skeptical of influencer endorsements, recognizing, most promotions are driven by financial incentives rather than genuine recommendations, as you described with your derm. So the erosion of trust, it's It's been termed influencer fatigue, and audiences feel completely overwhelmed and, more importantly, disillusioned by the constant barrage of sponsored content. Instagram, along with TikTok, has been the dominant platform for influencer marketing, but they've been seeing drops in their engagement. So according to Influencer Marketing Hub, influencer engagement on Instagram fell to its lowest level in 5 years, with average engagement now at 2%, 2.05% exactly. And accounts with over 1 million followers now see less than 1% engagement, compared to almost 2% in 2018. And I don't think that's really hit home with a lot of marketers. I mean, you tell me, but
That's meaningful. That
yeah,
is really meaningful stuff. That's a whole percentage point. It's huge.
yeah. And you want to, the in the marketer's thought, it's like, yes, the bigger audience, the better. And especially if they have a niche audience in a particular area. But if only 1% or less than 1% is seeing their posts in the first place, what's the point of engaging with them at all? Especially if their followers are feeling that their posts are not authentic, and that's why this engagement continues to drop. So, marketers are noticing the decline in influencer marketing effectiveness. It doesn't mean necessarily that the budgets have been shifting yet, because budgets have been allocated for influencer, but there has been a consistent downward trend in converting from influencer marketing. According to some industry experts, reach on Instagram Reels declined an average of 76% in 2023, according to Cole Square. And a Social Insider study found that engagement on Instagram Reels declined 25% from 2022 to 2023. So it's really dropping. It's dropping fast. So do you think many followers feel a disconnect when they see the influencers promoting products that don't seem authentic to them?
I think there's a couple of things in play here, and it's kind of the convergence of everything. Like, we live in a world of filters, metaphorically and physically. And, we have the filtered version of ourselves that we envision. And then we have this, when you scroll and you see these like filtered versions of what society, quote unquote, like thinks you should aspire to, it can be very daunting at the same time. It's like, how great do you feel after you just scrolled through a lot of these like perfect things that you're looking at? So, and we're not always the filtered version of ourselves all the time. And it's just not realistic. So I think this like non-real tone creates this underlying disconnect and also takes a lot of like that true emotion to connect with a product that you believe in. There's just this extra thing that needs to exist, because not every product is life-changing. And that term is also very relative. So it's not going to be the same for everyone. That's a very fine line when you're doing marketing. And like when you're talking about a product, you have to like believe in it, but also not oversell it, and also know what it is that it like, how it changed your life. If you're really going to use that term life-changing, and like you have to have this. And it's a tough thing to find that like perfect connection. And there's so many of it, like, and it's just more and more of the same gets tricky to distinguish between anything else. So differentiation becomes that much more challenging, both for brands and influencers, like finding your own voice. If there's a number of other voices that are similar to yours, like where do you fit in that? So it's kind of this two-pronged thing that exists out there. And then if you look at it by category, I mean, I love my luggage, but like how many new cutting edge suitcases do I really need every year? I mean, that's an investment. Like, I'm not going to make that investment every year or two. So, how many travel mugs or water bottles do we need? I mean, the memes about like having 18 drinks that you're carrying all the times it's funny, but like, is it practical? So things like that, I think, do create kind of a disconnect in their own way of like, how do you find that line? And then when you have an influencer that's talking about multiple different brands in the same category, that also gets tricky. So it's kind of like, which one is it? Or is it really none?
How do you as a consumer, think that expectations have shifted when it comes to influencer content. What you're expecting when you're engaging with it, or what you're looking for that's useful. And what's different than for consumers when they engage with this influencer content that might be different than just a couple of years ago?
I think that at the core of everything, consumers, I mean, even myself, like, we're looking for a personal connection, something that we can like connect with and say, oh, I can see myself using that product. I want to try it. If you think about pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, there were arguably 3 years that shifted our social interaction from in person to online, like really, really quickly. And without something that like forced us to be inside, like we really wouldn't have experienced this growth of social interaction via our phones.
Do you think that during the pandemic, the explosion happened because we were bored and we weren't getting outside and we needed to consume more content just to get through each day, and influencers played a big role by introducing us to new products? Or do you think that we went down the road of influencer recommendations because we weren't going into stores and getting help from store associates or educated people to introduce us to new products? Which came first?
I think that when we were home, I think there was a high majority of people that, or a group of people that, like, loneliness was bred because you weren't out with your friends. You weren't with your family as much. You weren't in the office at work. Certain people were, but it wasn't as nearly as enjoyable as it may have used to been. Like, and it was hard. Everything was harder. I think part of it was probably an escape. Let me go surf on my phone and look for something I can smile about. And also, yes, like to your point, the in-store interaction. You weren't going to a store. So if you were researching something or looking something up or finding a new product, you had to go online and like find basically reviews. And then it eventually, like, the social form of a review is, I mean, an influencer video at its foundational core is a review of a product in an interactive form. And that fed that need and just, kind of shifted the whole way that we interact with phones and people and products. And I think there's also this level of expectation where results are really important, and the value that someone's going to pay for those results is also there. And this instant gratification, like technology in general, just speeds everything up. And we require or really, really want these like instant gratification results. And those standards have grown. And short form video gives us this incredible ability to connect and showcase like products and the results. And when brands do it well, it really works. But the expectation of differentiation between those brands grows exponentially just as rapidly.
Yeah.
So the stakes are higher, basically.
For sure. I think it's interesting what you say, because people were lonely and they would connect with a personality, and then that personality, and that helped them get through the day in a real way, in a very emotional way. And then so when they would recommend this new product, you got to have it. It's awesome. They connected it in a totally emotional way that a television commercial would never be able to provide. So the purchases went up. So of course, more brands went for those. So prices went up. But now that, two things happened. One, people get to be around friends and family, so they're not as lonely, luckily. But two, that fatigue really did set in, which meant the engagement went down, which meant, to your point, the numbers weren't there. The conversion wasn't there, which means that the dollar amount goes down, which means that they actually have to do more. So influencers have to do more. So it's not as meaningful emotionally to follow a personality if all they're doing are this frantic promoting of products and the conversion isn't there anyway. So people still have budget for this. They still need to do it. It's still a real way to promote your brand. So what advice, like, I'm not totally saying that influencer is dead by any means, but I do think that it is quickly being adjusted in people's budgets, which means the value that they have has been decreasing. But awareness of a new product, discovery of a new product, driving traffic to a web page to convert, all of that remains valuable on one layer. It's like people know what a billboard is. People know a billboard is marketing. It doesn't mean that billboards don't have a place in the marketing funnel. For sure. Of course they do, but it's a very high top of the funnel awareness driver. What advice do you have for marketers on thinking about how to engage with influencers, how to work with influencers going forward?
Yeah, I mean, going off of like the stakes are just really, they're higher now, and it's harder to reach people, and it's just evolved into people being more discerning, that we have to go into this being very intentional about your product messaging and about how to convey that message. It's not easy, and things happen really quickly, and you only have a few seconds to connect and convey that messaging. So being really intentional is so critical in knowing your audience really, really well, and then narrowing it down a little bit more and creating that connection, like doing your homework of a deep dive into the influencer that you're thinking of partnering with, reading the comments, looking at their followers, and kind of seeing like, okay, does this identify with like, the audience that we know uses our products, and looking at their past posts and the engagement of those posts. And if they respond to them, if the brands respond, and kind of like that interaction, because brands that do really great listening are really successful here. And also like, what are the other brands that this influencer may have worked with? And does that all fit and ladder up to the goals of your brand? And the other piece is like, don't try to speak to everyone. Go into it with the goal of wanting to make new friends, and really thinking about like it almost like building a relationship. And you're going in and you're meeting people for the first time, and you're not going to introduce yourself the same way in every single social setting. So it's kind of thinking about it in that scope. And it gets more and more challenging as anyone gets older. It's no different for brands trying to talk to new consumers as they kind of, age in a business sense.
That's very well put. The idea of introducing yourself differently in different social circles is a really great way to think about it. Some people couldn't care at all what you do at work, and they want to know what sports you're into. And some people don't play any sports, and they want to know what specific area of marketing that you're in, and that's how they're going to have a connection with you there. So I think that's smart. I think another thing that you just mentioned is making sure it's not just the right personality and influencer, but who their audience is. And then looking at that audience and the engagement of past posts, is your product right for that channel? Yeah. Just because you like that individual doesn't mean that it's going to be received well by that specific channel in that specific place, just like introducing yourself at a party. You have to know not just your friend who invited you, but who's the audience that you're going to interact with there, and what's going to be received well. So bringing us to segment 3, which is the rise of expert marketing. Expert marketing is a significant departure from traditional influencer marketing. And it really is because of 3 key elements of focus: credibility, knowledge, genuine consumer value. So, as we talked about, as audiences become more discerning and skeptical of your typical influencer promotions, the demand for expert opinions across various niches really grows. And it's not, a trend. We have seen that over the past couple of years. It's a really powerful tool for brands looking to establish trust, foster a deeper connection, a deeper engagement with their consumers, just like the various different types of marketing from billboard and here and there. Expert marketing is really becoming a powerful area that brands need to focus on. So in this world, authenticity is paramount. Expert marketing allows brands to connect with their audience in a meaningful way. So by leveraging the insights and credibility of your industry experts, companies are able to create content that really resonates and drives value for consumers, while simultaneously increasing their own conversion rates and decreasing the number of products returned by consumers. So, again, like that's your point. Like, make sure that it's not just good for the personality and that connection, but make sure it's good for their audience, their friends who are at the party as well. So as traditional influencer marketing has faced increasing skepticism, how do you at Advantice Health adapt your e-commerce strategy to incorporate expert voices and build that consumer trust?
Yeah, this is a good one because this is something that we've developed more this year than we have in the past. And it's creating our e-commerce content. Like content is so very important, and not just in the social influence sense. It's just as important in our product detail pages. So, it might start with the social influence and the awareness, but then you can have all the success in the world of getting your voice out there and the brand out there. But when they come to the page to buy the product and the content's not great, they're not buying that product. So it's a very holistic view of how does everything work together. And where we've leaned in more is going back to, again, the foundation of our brands being efficacy and skin health. The natural progression of our content was to really lean further into these expert voices. So we've traditionally and still do work with healthcare professionals, but taking that a step further with a more expert influencer voice where we can have these videos that are not just for a social platform. It's for our product detail pages, and using different parts of those videos as different parts of our content to convey that message and show results, and also show a credentialed individual speaking about the product and from a science background and why they work. So I'll take it back to Kerasal and being a market leader in the foot care category. And it's a legacy brand. So how does Kerasal kind of evolve and stay current and with the times, all the while being not super sexy and, something that a lot of people want to talk about?
That's not one of the things you talk about at a party and introduce yourself at a party?
No. I don't think you lead with like, I'm one of the statistical percentages of people that have a fungal nail issue or nail damage.
Or just ask them, if you by any chance? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something you lead with at a party.
I will say though, when you and I first started speaking, and I was at our surf event that we were sponsoring with all these surfers, and I mentioned the product, the amount of people, men and women, who are like, "Oh, I've been dealing with this for years. I've had this problem for years." It's something that when people have it, they're not as embarrassed to talk about it because they just want to solve it. They just are looking for a solution. So I think you'd be surprised if you moved at a party with that.
But that's kind of where we could lean into using expert voices. And, a perfect example is this year, a lot of our e-commerce business is done on Amazon, and love it or hate it, it's there, and consumers love to shop on Amazon. It's very easy, it's seamless, and it's at your door either that day or shortly the day after. So the flip side of that is it's a very low barrier of entry for other brands to list their products on. And we saw this year that there was a big influx of what I'll call no-name brands listing their products with seemingly unsubstantiated claims. And, just as you said, like, you just want something that's going to help correct this. And when you see something that's like, oh, hey, like this says that it works and it treats this and does all of this great stuff, and you try it, but you find out, this really wasn't the best one. How do you distinguish the difference at a digital shelf? And there's a much higher barrier of entry to the physical shelf that stores will put on their shelves. And so in a digital space, we needed to do something to really create that differentiation and say like, no, like we're the legacy here. We're the number one doctor recommended brand in this category, and we're the ones that you want to use. So we went the expert voice route and really leaned into that to convey and show, here's a credentialed individual that's speaking to the efficacy and the results, and incorporated that into videos, into the messaging on the product detail pages, and then also kept that consistent along our meta campaigns and streaming TV ads, where we had different experts in different media platforms talking about the product in similar ways, but connecting with different audiences. So it was really kind of marrying everything from the the marketing standpoint, the awareness drivers, and the product detail page to take it from, the true top of the funnel to the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to be the good guy in a digital C, where it is so easy to create a product and start marketing it. On our last podcast, it was all about returns. And one of the stats that we talked about was Amazon had just put out something saying, if you have 4 videos on your website, you're going to increase sales, but you're going to decrease returns by 40%. Great. But it doesn't say what type of videos. So of course, people just run out and create videos, and they're doing it with AI, and they don't play by the rules. And I know a lot of your competitors know that putting somebody in a white lab coat is going to bring that scientific trust to the table. So they just do it. So how do you, who has to play by the rules, because you guys are in store, you are the leader in these different categories, can you share an example of how you leverage that expert knowledge in your marketing expert efforts, and how that impacts your sales and consumer engagement metrics?
I think it's really important to use different voices, because again, it's similar to, you're not going to introduce yourself in the same way of when you're meeting like your parents' friends as you are when you're meeting like your husband's colleagues. It's just going to be like a little bit different. So having different voices talking about your products is really, really important here. And like, we had the opportunity of working with a podiatrist, Dr. Alex, and a dermatologist, and then also kind of like the surprise factor expert was Tana Buford Bailey, who is an Olympic runner, an Olympic coach, and all of these experts have different perspectives and speak to different consumers and different audiences. Tanya, as an esteemed runner, was great because she reframed having foot issues as a badge of honor. And if that you were experiencing them, then you were doing it right. It was great timing because we had streaming TV campaigns running, and Tanya talking about how, when you're a runner and your foot is in a sneaker all day and you have, this environment where fungus can grow, it's a real thing. And, but you're training and you're practicing and, you're going for gold. So it's okay. And, this is what you dream of. So, but here's something that can also help your feet. And it was great timing because we were at the Olympic trials, and then, the Olympics were airing. So it was all this lead up, and it was really, really relevant. And it was great because it also coincided with Amazon's Prime Day. So we had all these pieces of content in all of our different parts of marketing and our product detail pages. And we did see an improvement in conversion since updating our PDPs and utilizing this expert content in multiple marketing efforts. And we found that it helped support like the credibility of our product, which is more challenging to convey on a digital shelf compared to that physical shelf.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the reframing that an expert is able to bring to the table, to me, is everything. There's only so much you could do with foot fungus cream with influencers. But to your point, when you have an Olympic athlete during the Olympics talking about, this is just part of the path, this is part of the journey to winning gold. And it just so happened that the runner who she trained, Gabby Thomas, won 3 gold medals for the U.S.
Yes.
And 3 golds during that airing. So the reframing is, I think, to me, the most valuable thing that you could do in the consumer's mindset. So looking ahead, how do you see that role of expert marketing evolving in the e-commerce landscape for brands? And what steps will Advantice take to stay ahead in this trend as other brands start to catch up to it?
I can see us going forward and making like expert videos a standard part of our internal, what we consider best in class model for all products in our assortment. And I think it'll also play a role in the development of new products as well when it comes to the packaging design and the graphics and even the form factor in which we use for like the physical packaging that the product will go in, and just of how it will be filmed and how it will become a part of like that thought process where digital is just becoming more and more a key consideration and a driver in those decisions. So putting these videos across all of our retailer.com placements and thinking about it from the beginning of concept and how it will look in use is really, really important, and how it will come across, and even like the medium in which that these are viewed on, where we always look at our desktop screen, but a majority of consumers like shop and convert on mobile. So even taking that into consideration in the process of design. So, and the more we lean into content and the more we lean into, just the different places that we want to be will be really important.
I think what's so interesting about the conversion on mobile is that when we started the Desire company, I had all these stats about, well, if they're looking on their phone, they're less likely to convert because conversions really take place on the desktop. And that has completely changed over, the last 6 years, where now you'll be watching TV, have your laptop open, working your phone at the same time, and purchases will happen anywhere, including on the TV through your remote. And that's only evolving. So on that like broader issue, based on everything we've discussed today, e-commerce has evolved significantly in the past decade. No question about that. How do you envision the evolution of e-commerce in the coming years?
So I feel this wouldn't be a current conversation without having some mention of AI. But
I hate it, but go ahead.
It's more a factor of like, identifying where you need to optimize and then seeing if like AI is the right use for that versus like, here's AI and, figure out where to put the square peg in the round hole. But
yeah. And let me back up and clarify. I don't hate AI because we've been using AI for the last 15 years.
We just called it something different. Yeah.
We just didn't really refer to it as anything. I hate the trend of labeling everything AI. The advancements are pretty cool though, but just to clarify.
I think that we'll see more with the growing of the use of digital twins as consumers. So more and more people are starting to experiment with creating like a digital version of themselves. And I think it will compensate for things like manually searching and clicking to add to cart, and checkout will eventually be like, we'll show you a product video and just ask for a verbal confirmation to purchase. And I think the Pinterest piece is going to continue its resurgence and continue to kind of promote brand awareness and like discoverability.
Yeah, and another thing that you said is really interesting, because I used to think about technology influencing consumer behavior and evolution of technology and e-commerce really having the bigger impact on consumer behavior, meaning like people weren't ready for a touchscreen computer. So we started with the phone, training people, then to the iPad, and the evolution will come, and technology has always trained us. But now it seems that technology has to constantly evolve and rapidly catch up with consumer behavior. So what shifts in consumer behavior are you anticipating that will influence the next generation of e-commerce?
I think sustainability will continue to grow and be very, very important. I think what that looks like as we go further into the future is that we'll start seeing less and less like goop in a tube, and it'll follow similarly to laundry detergent becoming a sheet, and we'll have less plastic bottles and less actual liquid in those bottles, where it'll become versions of, just add water, and there'll be other knock-on benefits to that too, because they're lighter to ship, they're easier for travel, and you're not dealing with like a delivery with, in the case of like lotion, like sometimes you get an exploded bottle because of transit. So I think we'll start seeing more and more of that. I think there's more out there that can stand that transition.
So now my favorite segment, the closing segment, Experts Corner, our conclusion questions. I'm going to rapid fire some things out. What's a strategy everyone's following, but no one is questioning?
TikTok shop.
TikTok shop. Ooh, I like that. What is a trend that you think will be on the decline or even dead within the next year?
I think locking up products in physical stores.
Thank you.
That will go down.
What's one thing everyone in your industry is afraid to admit?
Everything has a shorter and shorter shelf life, and it will continue to get shorter.
Is that products or marketing, content, or all of the above?
A little bit of all of the above, but really content. Like, we just got to keep creating really good, really bold, really fresh, really relevant content.
What's the most controversial opinion that you hold?
I think we may see fewer major retailers in the next few years.
Meaning that it will go to more consolidation as one or two, or lots of more fragmentation in the market?
There will be at least one less big retailer when it comes to the drug category, like CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid. I don't think we're going to have all three in the next couple of years.
And if you had to bet your career on one prediction, what would it be?
I think the popularity of women's sports is going to explode.
I love that. That's a great one. Okay, so Ash, it is, as always, wonderful speaking with you. Wonderful having you on today. In conclusion, things are moving really fast, and brands need to constantly be rethinking how they're connecting with their consumers, the ways that they're doing so. All content, all marketing is not created equal, and things evolve very fast, and it's really important to stay on top of your game. It's important not to give up on things that have worked for you in the past that are now diminishing in returns and conversions, is what I heard. But while you continue to adjust and invest in those, be looking at what's next and really looking at consumer behavior as how you want to introduce yourself at the consumer party, wherever that might be, whatever store or online or audience that you're speaking to, you have to adjust your tone. And I think that's one of the most interesting things that I took away from today, because that is not something that a lot of people do. A lot of people have their message the way that they want it, and they put it out to every audience the same way. And it's really important and okay to adjust your message for the different audience that you're talking to at different times that you're speaking to them. So thank you very much for your insights, for your contributions here today. For our audience, if you want to connect with Ash, she's on LinkedIn. She's on the Advantice website. We will have the link in show notes. Ash, do you want to give your LinkedIn on here?
Oh, yeah, that's totally fine. It's just LinkedIn /Ash McMullen.
Awesome. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Tap Into an Expert, where we tap into the experts for you. If you want to learn more, visit thedesiredcompany.com and click on resources. We've got a lot of case studies outlining how expert videos can work for your brand. And there will be a link to those studies and case studies as well. And Ash, thank you again. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for having me.